Welcome to the Awakening podcast. Most of us recycle our plastic bottles and feel pretty good about ourselves. Today's guest would like a word with you about that. Dr. Chris DeArmitt is one of the world's leading authorities on plastics, microplastics, and the environment, a man who has personally reviewed over 5,000 scientific studies. He wrote The Plastics Paradox, founded the Plastics Research Council, and had made it his life's mission to replace environmental mythology with actual science. A mission that you can imagine has made him very popular at dinner parties. If you think you already know the plastic story, buckle up because our guest has read the footnotes, checked the references, and he's not here to make you comfortable. He's here to make you informed. Please welcome Chris DeArmitt.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, no problem. So, I suppose let's kind of go back a bit because you've studied a lot, but I want to kind of know a little bit about yourself first and how you got into all this.
Sure. Yeah, so my job is to be a scientist, right? I care about facts and then solving problems based on the facts. It's usually easy to solve problems if you start off with good data. And I was not any more interested in plastics in the environment than anyone, just a normal person. It never really crossed my mind until my daughters came home one day from elementary school and their teachers had told them that plastics don't degrade. And that's just an outright lie. Plastics are made of the same carbon-carbon bonds as an apple or we are or a leaf is or a tree is, and they degrade exactly the same. So that made me angry. I thought, I'm paying a lot of property taxes so that my kids can be in a good school district, only to have them brainwashed with nonsense. And then they asked me other questions about plastic. So I've been on TV, this vaginal and hernia mesh that you get in your body?
I didn't know about that, but I when I was researching, I found it and I was like, that was scary.
Yeah, so I was an expert witness saying that plastic never should have been used. It should never have been put in the body. It was completely inappropriate and it was degrading really quickly and causing, problems for women. I got settlements for 9,000 women. So I'm not on the side of plastic. I'm on the side of whatever's true. In that case, I was against the plastic because it was the wrong choice. Anyway, so plastic does degrade. There's thousands and thousands of studies on it. And then people would say, well, all right, it degrades. What about litter? And I'd say, I don't know. I don't know about litter. I'll have to read the science. What about waste? I don't know. What about the oceans? Don't know. What about microplastics? Don't know. So in order to really have the science, I forced myself to read 400 studies. And then I published the Plastics Paradox book 6 years ago. And I just did it to get it off my chest because I was angry that my kids had been lied to. And I thought that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. People actually read it, translated it into 5 languages, and it took off worldwide. And professors even contacted me and said they were teaching their students based on that book and so forth. So it kind of mushroomed out of control. And as you said, my goal is not to take a side. My goal as a scientist, a proper scientist, is to share peer-reviewed evidence verbatim. I literally copy and paste from the studies with links so you can go check it yourself. Professors worldwide have checked this work and nobody's ever found a single error in it. It's all verified as correct. So, and if you do start with these facts, solutions are really simple. So hopefully we'll get to some of those in your podcast.
So, because this is something that frustrates people. You've got peer-reviewed and paid-reviewed. And, they even with a lot of the things that's going on, they can hide 95% of it and show the best results because,
yes,
it's the people. So how do people know what to trust?
Yeah. Well, here's a simple way. I'm telling you the truth for free and other people are telling you lies for money. So you can decide who you want to trust. There's literally billionaires funding organizations to make up stories about plastics because they're against plastics, right? So they don't care what's true. All they care about is demonizing plastics. So you mentioned peer-reviewed studies. There's been a few studies in the Lancet recently. One was funded by a billionaire called Michael Bloomberg. Another one was funded by Bill Gates. And these studies are like saying the exact opposite of what every other study says. They're just complete fiction. So it's not, and they're peer-reviewed, right? So you have to be careful. The only sound way to know what's true is to read the study and compare it to the rest of the science. And that's why my latest book is based on 6,000 studies that I reviewed. Not to pick one study like most people do that supports the case that you want to support. The real scientist reads every single study, and now I've got reading glasses to prove it, right? And then I send it to professors all around the world to double check that I got it right and spot any errors, and then you share it for free. And that's what I do. And you can like it or not. I once told a TV reporter who was here in the house, I said, I'm not here to be liked, I'm here to be right.
And that's the way it should be.
Yeah, yeah. So too many people are worried about, they just say whatever it takes to make people happy. They just go in, they're like sheep, they just go with the crowd. And I can understand that, because if you are passionate about truth, it puts you in a tricky spot. It means that people attack you all the time.
So I suppose one of the things that most people would have seen, unfortunately, might have experienced, is when you've got these protesters going across the road. And I laugh at that, because the sign they have is made of plastics. The shoes they're wearing, the runners, is made of plastics. Most of their clothes are plastic. Their phones, and it's like save the planet. So maybe touch on that, the stupidity of that.
Yeah, it is stupid. So it's unfortunate that so many of the people who claim to care don't really care. Those people you just mentioned, right? They're going around waving a cotton bag thinking that they're an angel, and it's like 200 times worse for the environment than the plastic bag that it replaced. So a lot of people are just out there virtue signaling. That's where you want to look good, feel good to yourself and look good to your friends without actually doing anything that would actually help. So scientists looked at that. They said, what are the things you can do to really help the environment? The three things you can do is fly less. Nobody wants to do it because it means less holidays. So they don't do that, right? That's a thing you could really do, but nobody wants to do it because it means an actual sacrifice.
Davos, and that would stop a lot of flights.
Yeah, that's a good one, yeah. And then drive less and eat less meat and insulate your home. So things that would actually make a difference cost money, or they involve a sacrifice. So people don't want to do it. So what do they do instead? They talk about straws all day. The easy answer to straws is just say no to the straw, right? You don't have to be Albert Einstein to work that out. So people
just understand that, because this is an important one. Because one, there was the straws that just disintegrate and they weren't good. But I heard that there's actually plastic on the inside lining of the paper straws. And it's the same with the paper cups, that people don't realize. They think I'm doing good for the environment, I've got a paper cup. But there's actually plastic in it. There's plastic in a can of Coke as well.
Yeah. Yeah, the metal gets attacked by the Coca-Cola if you don't put a layer of plastic inside. And the paper cups, everyone knows paper isn't waterproof. So you have to put either a plastic or PFAS, a fluorinated compound on there to make it waterproof, like waterproofing agent. So yeah, and they've done a study on paper showing it has more toxins than plastic. So it's more chemicals in there. People think of it as natural, but it isn't. So yeah, there's a lot of people doing crazy stuff because they were too lazy to check the science, and partly because they're being taught this nonsense at school. And we're stuck with information overload now. You see a headline, like there was one, we eat a credit card of plastic a week. The World Wildlife Fund is still making donations based on that. And it's not true. It takes 10,000 years to eat that much plastic. But of course, if you can make donations on it, why not say it? That's very convenient. There was another one. We have a credit card. Well, we have a spoonful of plastic in our brain. Scientists all around the world said that study is complete nonsense. It's been disproven again and again and again for 2 years. And it's still going around the world, because it's so exciting. The lie is so much more exciting than the truth. As Mark Twain once said, the truth never catches up with the lies, because the lies are exciting.
And like you mentioned, the 1,000 years, because you hear that regurgitated thousands of times. Oh, it takes 1,000 years to break down. So yeah, let's debunk that one.
Well, try going to the hardware store and asking for some guttering or something that's going to guarantee to last 1,000 years. They'll laugh you right out of the shop. I mean, we know that our car headlights go misty and yellow and fail. We know that our garden furniture crumbles under the legs snap off when we sit on it. It goes all white and chalky. We know that the siding on our houses goes white and chalky and crumbly over years from sunlight exposure. So apparently, we're able to see all of these things happening with our own eyes. And as soon as Greenpeace or the World Wildlife Fund or whoever else tells us that it takes 1,000 years, we go, oh, yeah, that sounds reasonable. You're like, really? You'd rather believe an NGO who's making money from your donations than your own eyeballs, which is preposterous. And as I said earlier, right, plastic is made of the same carbon-carbon bonds as paper and trees and apples and us, right? You don't bury somebody and expect them to be there 1,000 years later, right? They're gone. So this idea that plastic is not degrading is just a lie. There's thousands and thousands of studies. There's a whole journal from Elsevier called Polymer Degradation and Stabilization. My professor was the editor of it, and it's been going for 50 years. It's like all about how to stop plastic from degrading so quickly. It degrades too quickly. People are still trying to come up with better additives to slow it down.
And because I remember at one stage there was a business, they were trying to have the biodegradable, because they were saying it breaks down faster and it's better, whereas they were using the 1,000 year, but that was breaking down on the shelf and it didn't work. So it was breaking down too fast.
Yeah, that's the thing with polymers. So it's actually perfect because they want to degrade very quickly, right? So if you drop a plastic bag, they've actually measured this. They'll tell you online. I see graphics now on LinkedIn. Plastic bag takes 450 years to degrade. That was made up. Somebody just pulled that right out of their you know what, right? It was complete fiction. There's never been a single scientific study that said that. So they measured how long does it take for a plastic bag to degrade if you just drop it on your garden? And the answer is it falls to bits and degrades in less than a year, 9 months. Right. So we're told hundreds of years, and in reality, it degrades at the same speed as a paper bag. So that's a regular plastic bag. The trouble is we don't really want degradation because that degradation means converting a solid into carbon dioxide, which is greenhouse gas, right? Which is what most people are against. So you go for a degradable bag, you're paying more money for something that's actually increasing global warming if you're, if you're an anti-global warming person. So your best option is to buy a regular plastic, and the manufacturer puts in just the right amount of stabilizer and the right kinds to make it last as long as it needs to last. So a bag is disposable, and if you drop it by accident, it will disappear. On the other hand, a plastic pipe can last in the ground for over 100 years, no problem, because it has better and more stabilizers in it. So that's the perfect situation. It's a material with tunable degradation.
And with the bags, because what they pushed in is kind of Everlife bags, the thicker. But the problem is something spills in them. They do rip, they do break, but
Yeah.
there's a lot more plastic in them. Like,
Yes.
I'm assuming they take a long time to break down as opposed to the ones that we used to be using all the time.
Yeah, so the thicker something is, the longer it takes to degrade. They've actually seen these, those redwood sequoias that fall over in the forest. They can sit there for hundreds of years, fallen over, and still haven't degraded. So thick things take a lot longer to degrade. And the reusable bags, you're right. So they do. The only way to know what causes more or less harm is a life cycle analysis. That's where you add up all the impact of the whole lifetime of that product, whether it's a bag or an airplane, right? And when you do that, you find out that those reusable bags you mentioned, they're much thicker, and they have less impact if you reuse them enough times. So in theory, they're actually better than the regular polyethylene bag. But in practice, people forget them at home. So what you end up doing is selling more plastic and creating more waste.
I think I have 1,000 of them at this stage.
Yeah, I've got a whole cupboard. I've got a cupboard so full of those takeaway Tupperware container things that I can't even close the cupboard anymore. It's just selling more plastic, creating more waste, using more material, all for the illusion of feeling good about ourselves because we couldn't be bothered to take one less flight and not go on holiday.
So with the tires, there's a few things I want to touch on the tires, but one I saw at one stage they just decided to chuck them all into the sea, and then you'd see scuba divers, and you just see because obviously that's a lot thicker. Does that break down as well eventually? I know there's metal in it as well.
Right, a couple of things to say about that. First of all, rubber is not plastic. So there's polymers that's a group of large molecules, right? Including DNA and cellulose and collagen and enzymes and polyethylene and polypropylene and rubber. So polymers, that means something with many units, a large molecule. Rubber is a subset of that, and so is plastic, but they're not the same. So technically micro rubber is not microplastic. So that's the first thing to say. It's a different material. And that's important because when I look at 600 studies on microplastics, I've never seen a single credible study showing any toxicity or anything happening. Just literally, they've fed it to animals for months and nothing happens. Whereas rubber is the opposite. Rubber actually does release a toxic chemical. That's proven. So if you put tires in a stream, you poison the salmon and they die. So there's a stabilizer in the rubber which then converts to another chemical when it's doing its job as a stabilizer. And that, I think it's called like 6-ppdq or something like that, some really unmemorable name. That converts to something that's highly toxic. So yeah, tires do degrade over time, like anything made of carbon does, but it's that's very different to microplastic, and it can be toxic. Yeah, so I wouldn't recommend just sticking tires anywhere and expecting good things to happen.
And with the breast implants, is that rubber or is it a form of plastic that's over the silicone?
So say that again, I didn't catch it.
With breast implants, is that a rubber as well that's over the silicone?
Yeah, so breast implants.
That's kind of, I suppose, kind of similar to the thing with the women with the mesh, because they get a lot of it hardens, I believe. So
yeah, I have not looked into the science of that. So that's made of silicone, and it can be filled with saline solution, which is just water with some salt in it, or silicone fluid. And I think they stopped using the silicone fluid one because that could, although I don't think they ever proved it was toxic, it could leak out. And
but I'm talking about the external part.
Yeah, that's silicone rubber. Yeah,
rubber. Yeah.
Yeah. So Yeah, I have not looked into the science on that. So the special thing about polypropylene, which is what this mesh is made of, when you put it in the body sees that as like, if you had a splinter or something, your body recognizes foreign objects and it has a reaction to it. It's called it creates reactive oxygen species. And those reactive oxygen species are brilliant at attacking polypropylene. So that is kind of like a fishing wire in there that's woven into a mesh, and it gets destroyed by your body's system. So and then you've got like little jaggedy pieces, right? Because that mesh has been broken down into little segments. So, and it creates inflammation, your body's response. The same as if you had a splinter in your body, right? You get red and you get sore. That's what can happen there. So, on the other hand, so I know a lot about the science of that, but I have not investigated the science of the silicone thing. That's outside of my field because it's rubber instead of that's the thing. When you're a professional scientist, you don't just wing it, right, and give opinions on things you don't know about.
That's what I love. I mean, that's the best way to do it, where some people do, and that way you get more credibility, I think, when you say that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's in fact, when you're a fellow of the Royal Society of Chemistry, like I am, you have to, you have a code of conduct, and one of them is to say things where you're an expert and not to say things where you're not an expert, because people will trust you, thinking that you know what you're talking about when you might be just, winging it in some other area. And that's, unfortunately, medical doctors seem very happy to do that. There's plenty of them on the internet spreading outright lies about microplastics, and they think because they've got a stethoscope around their neck, they're completely credible and able to give an opinion on anything. I certainly would not offer to take your tonsils out, and it would be nice if they didn't go around giving opinions on things that they're not qualified to.
Yeah. With the water then, because we hear a lot of this, the water bottles, they're stored in, the sun gets at them, all the little microplastics leak, and then you're drinking it. That's going into your body. What's the truth on that one?
Yeah, total nonsense. So there's many things to say about that. One is that the little particles you get is incredibly small amount. It's like 0.0000001% of the amount of water. That's the amount of plastic. And it's generated by screwing and unscrewing the cap, right? It's just abrasion. And that's important because that means that those plastic particles are not some weird contamination that nobody knows. They're not like some dust from the floor of the factory, right? They're literally the FDA approved polyethylene and PET that the bottle's made of in an incredibly small amount, right? That doesn't cause any harm, completely non-toxic. So they fed 5% of the diet of rats as either polyethylene or PET for months, zero effect, because it's non-toxic, right? It's literally nothing happening. So people are obsessing over this 0.0000001% by weight of something that's non-toxic. So that's not a problem. And then when it comes to the sunshine, this is fascinating. So I didn't know before I started checking this, but in like poor countries, they don't have safe water. It comes out of a well and it's full of bacteria, and you can get diarrhea, and people die from it in large numbers every year just from not having clean water. So what they do is they disinfect it using sunlight. And the way they do that is they take a used PET bottle, fill it with this bacteria-filled water, and they leave it on the roof, and it gets extremely hot up there, and the UV from the sunlight is killing the bacteria at the same time as the temperature's killing them. So after one day on the roof, baking hot on the roof, you can take that down, cool it, and drink it, and it's safe. That's called solar water disinfection, SODIS for short, and it's saving like millions of people use this. It's saving tens of thousands of lives. And then, of course, scientists said, well, what about the chemicals coming out of the PET bottle? Isn't that harmful? So they measured it, and there was like nothing there. There was no harm whatsoever. There were tiny amounts of chemical, but mainly it was coming from whatever, like orange juice or whatever had been in the bottle before. They didn't find anything harmful at all. So that's been studied. Even if you were to take that bottle and bake the heck out of it on a roof in Africa for a whole day, there's no harm.
You said something there, I know, that actually made me feel good. You were saying that they tested it on rats, because I read a book. It was written around 80 years ago. It was The Wheel of Health, I believe, Dr. Wrench, and he tested all the rats with the food, and they saw all the different things, the diseases and everything. So it was so from that moment, I thought, okay, because they were saying a rat of 2 years is equivalent to a human of 50. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I always kind of paid attention to that. And I think, like, say, aspartame causes cancer in rats, but it's safe for us, loads of things like that. So when you tell me that it's okay for rats, that's actually making me go, okay. And I think a lot of this as well is with the brainwashing going on, the propaganda. People then can make themselves ill by thinking, oh my God, I'm drinking a water bottle that's got these microplastics, and my brain has got so much percentage of microplastics.
That's exactly right. I was on a podcast a couple of weeks ago, and that woman, she was a medical doctor, and her specialty was stress. And I looked up the science on that. Worrying about things which are not worth worrying about, it causes more health effects than the thing, because the thing was non-toxic in the first place. So there you are, worrying yourself to death. There's definite proven heart consequences, health consequences, everything from, I mean, if you want to worry, right, how much time can you spend worrying, right? Worry about something that's actually worth worrying about, like a war or feeding your kids or, something that actually makes a difference. Don't worry about things that are proven to be non-toxic. And let's give one example. This is really extreme because you mentioned rats. They replaced 25% of the diet of rats with Teflon from your frying pan, right? The one that everyone says is PFAS and you have to get rid of it and it's toxic. They fed it to rats, 25% of their diet. For 3 months, nothing happened. The scientists who run the study said this would be brilliant for weight loss. You could like fill up on PTFE and it's completely non-toxic. It goes right through. That's literally what the scientists said. They said it's so non-toxic you could eat it and lose weight. And I'm not suggesting you do that, but that's how non-toxic it is. It's less toxic than table salt. It's less toxic than caffeine in your coffee. It's less toxic than almost anything they've ever measured, right? And this is what people are telling you to avoid. Let's ban PFAS. You're like, well, that's just stupid. It's PFAS is thousands of chemicals, and to ban all of them would like somebody made a great analogy, right? There's a million Jacks, but only one Jack the Ripper, right? If there's a guy called Jack and he's a criminal, put him in prison. But you don't put everyone called Jack in prison. And that's what they're doing with PFAS, right? They're saying, well, there's 10,000 chemicals in this group of PFAS. And rather than actually use our brains and follow the science and ban the ones that are a problem, let's just ban the whole lot of them because we're stupid politicians who can't be bothered to read anything. And that's just pathetic, right? That's not how the world should be. You can't go around banning. Imagine one. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. You see, that's not how justice works. Imagine you went in front of the judge and he said, oh, my name's John. And he goes, oh, I'm sorry. I once met a John and he was a criminal, so I'm going to put you behind bars. I mean, that's how absurd this thinking is. And that's what we're doing today. I'm not saying we should keep all the toxic PFAS, ban what is, toxic, but keep the stuff that's important. Like Teflon, you cannot escape planet Earth without fluoropolymers like Teflon, right? You cannot build a rocket. You cannot make things that work. You can't fly an airplane without that as insulation on your wires. I mean, some of these things are not only non-toxic, but fundamental to our survival. And we're banning these things because we couldn't be bothered to switch our brain on.
Like you mentioned governments. I mean, I pay a lot of attention to the different countries. It looks like the whole is controlled. They're all in position because they've been placed there. But is there any that's actually listening to what you're saying and making changes for the better?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I started, I was one crazy dude on a couch. As I said, I've read 6,000 studies unpaid to be impartial and make sure that everything's right, had it verified. And initially, I mean, it was brutal. Nobody was really listening because it was so anti what they've been brainwashed with, right, by the media. And then after a while, people started checking what I was saying. Go, oh, hang on a minute, this is right. Everything he said is like verbatim from the study. The links check out. This is correct. And professors started joining me. So the Plastic Research Council is a bunch of professors, a toxicologist, and other experts who asked to work for free to get the science out. And then even policymakers started asking me for the science because they can't find anyone credible to ask, right? Because they're all getting paid to tell lies. So, and taking donations for nonsense like a credit card of plastic a week. So they thought, well, this guy's working unpaid, right? And people have verified his work. So I met the Minister for the Environment of Mexico, Alicia Ibarra, and she's a scientist, so she cared about evidence, right? And credit to her. So I met her in her office and showed her the science, and she goes, "Oh, I get it. Yeah, this has been blown out of all proportion." And now she demands to see evidence, right? When people come in, they can't just march in, these NGOs, and tell her whoppers. They have to come into her office, and she said, "If you don't get an appointment, if you don't have evidence, come in here and show me the evidence, and I'll listen to you." And that's fantastic. That's all I'm asking for, is that these politicians look at the data. And here's an example. So they're all, another one was the Republican attorneys general had me in for a talk, and I showed them that the stuff that they were looking at was not credible, and they changed their minds. So I've had so far very good success at showing the science. And one example is plastic bags, right? So there's 30 studies in the world on plastic bags and bags in general. Every one ever done shows that the polyethylene bag has the lowest impact. What are the politicians doing it? Banning and taxing it. Why would you ban and tax the option with the lowest impact? And then they did, this is even funnier. So after the ban in New Jersey and Maine, they did a study to say, the politicians are like, yeah, look what a great job I did. Let's do a study to prove what a genius I am. So they did this post-ban study and found that environmental impact was exponentially higher after the ban, and plastic sales increased massively because those thin bags you get from the grocery store that you reuse as trash bags, you can see through them, the ones in America. There's hardly any plastic there. They weigh 6 grams. Paper bag, 60 grams, right? So when you're no longer able to use those because they've been banned, you have to go and buy a really thick plastic bag from the grocery store and use that instead. You end up selling 5 times more plastic. So these idiots, I mean, they literally can go to the Google search bar and type in life cycle bag, and they could find a study in 3 seconds that would tell them not to ban the greenest solution. Did this ever occur to any of these politicians or green groups in the last 10 years? Apparently not. Apparently they're unable to use Google to find the science.
So with the recycling then, because I've heard, like, I was recycling before it became, where the bin men would come around and take the recycling, they just take the rubbish. So I used to actually put the stuff, the paper and the plastic, and drive somewhere to put it in from, my 20s. And now everywhere has special bins segregating the bin and everything. But I've heard a few cases that people are assuming this has been taken because they're washing it and making it clean, that it's going to be recycled. And I'm hearing all different stories that it's shipped off to Asia, it's just burnt. What's really going on?
Yeah. So recycling is a complex topic. The first thing to say is if you look at a life cycle study, plastic has the lowest impact even if you don't recycle. So people think that we need recycling to make plastic green, and that's not the case. It's already the lowest impact solution, even if you were to just throw it in the bin, right? So recycling is like the icing on the cake. So when you do recycle, it further reduces impact by 70 or 80%. You can take the plastic, sort it, wash it, grind it up, and then remelt it into a new part. That's called mechanical recycling, and it does work, and it is green. Chemical recycling is uncertain whether that actually helps the environment or not. It's a lot of razzmatazz and smoke and mirrors, if you ask me. But normal mechanical recycling, which is the regular kind that everyone's doing, that does work and it is green. What's happening in your particular region, whether your local people want to do something else with it, I don't know. That's specific to your area. But I know that it is being recycled in huge amounts all around the world. There are areas where they collect 97% of PET bottles and recycle them 10 or 12 times. People tell you can only do it once or twice. That's not true either. So I can't stop people from doing a fast one. There's people who will just tip it on the side of the road or throw it in a river rather than bother to transport it where you pay them to take it. And I'm sure that does happen in some regions because of corruption. But recycling does work, and it is done at a huge scale all around the world. I can tell you that.
Yeah, and recently Poland, they introduced that it's like 50 grolch, which would be about, I suppose, between 15 to 20 cent US. And I mean, everybody was recycling anyway. So now that's added on. And then you have to create a bag, which when you go there with the milk bottle, no, you can't do milk bottles. And then you might, because there's like 3 supermarkets by me, you can't put in one from one thing because it's from the other shop. And then you just go, this is a hassle. But the other side that I wasn't expecting is, I mean, the bin men come on different days for, the bios one day and the general rubbish the Fridays. There's people now just ripping the bags open, assuming they'll get something to make money. And everything is just thrown around the garden. And you see, that's the downside by the way they've done it. It was working. The way it was, I didn't see everybody was recycling.
Right. I don't like this thing that the government's telling us what to buy, banning the greenest solution, taxing the greenest solution, telling us what to buy, telling me what I should be sorting in my spare time. When I stop working, I don't want to be doing what the government's telling me in my own home, putting things in bins. They can sod off as far as I'm concerned, right? I'm sorry if I can't say that on your podcast, but the government telling you what to do in the privacy of your own home is beyond the pale, right? I mean, these people are money-grabbing idiots in the first place. We don't need to go a step further and have them telling us what to do in our own kitchens with our valuable time when we're not, which we should be spending with our families. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. And the other thing is they implement things that don't work, as you just said. So in India, they're trying to implement like some sort of deposit, but they're only doing it experimentally in one part of the country, right? Which means you have to label the bottle from exactly that part of the country to know that it's in that region, right? Otherwise, everyone else could bring in their bottles and get deposits that hadn't been paid. And so Of course, it never occurred to the politicians to check whether this system was actually feasible. And it turns out you can't print individual labels for bottles quick enough on a production line at whatever it is, 600 bottles a minute, right? You have to slow the lines down to 100 bottles a minute to print it. And so the whole thing, the whole economics, the whole environmental impact is completely different when you have to run the factory at, 20% of speed just to accommodate some wacky label that a politician decided to put on. And it's not to say that the whole thing couldn't work countrywide, but the way that they decided to implement it, they sit in their little offices and they decide how we should behave and what the policy should look like without ever asking anyone whether it's feasible. So things can, as you said, things can get a bit out of control. But I will say one thing. People want recycling because they think it stops litter, and it doesn't. There's no correlation between recycling and litter. People want degradation because they think now I can drop my litter and it will vanish like Harry Potter, right? It will degrade. Nature will take care of it, and that's also a misconception. It's not. You end up with twice as much littering when you give people degradables because they think just that I can drop it on the floor now. So littering gets even worse. The thing that stops littering. And this is coming back to what I said. Once you understand a problem, littering is caused by people. They drop it on purpose. It's scientifically proven. And solutions to that are waste pickers, in poor countries especially, education, deposits, and fines. That's what stops litter, not recycling, not degradables, not any of this other nonsense. And this is a case of as soon as you understand the problem, it's human behavior. They'll never blame themselves in a million years. But scientists have literally watched them drop thousands and thousands of pieces of litter on purpose, turn around and blame Coca-Cola or the plastic or the dog or the cat or the kid or whatever, but they'll never blame themselves and look in the mirror.
If we look at the sea, because I've seen a few things. I saw they put a big mesh at the end of a river and it was gathering all the plastic. So that was stopping it going. And I thought, okay, why isn't that done in more places? But like, they'd show you the picture of the turtle with the straw up its nose, and it's like it's the straws of the problem. But like when I researched it, it seems to be all the trawlers, the fishing nets is one of the biggest. So with the water, because I'm seeing stuff, and I don't know, it's half the stuff where they're trying to get people to invest in the plastic stuff, because there's one thing is supposed to self-sustain, it moves itself, it eats up the plastic. And is it true? I haven't a clue. I don't know. I can't prove that. But regarding the sea and the nets and everything, how do we tackle that one?
So we've been sold a lie. We're told that there's an ocean plastic crisis, and I don't want to say there should be plastic in the ocean. That's definitely, there shouldn't be any junk in the ocean. That's clear, right? We shouldn't be sinking ships in the ocean. We shouldn't be disposing of chemical weapons in the ocean. Shouldn't be putting plastic in the ocean or anything else. At the same time, we shouldn't lie about how much is there. So just to give you an idea, we're told that the ocean is drowning in plastic. It's choking in plastic, right? So I did the calculation, how much plastic is going into the ocean. This will blow your mind, right? So the Earth has 8 billion people on it, right? So imagine that there's only 8 billion people on the Earth and no plants or animals or anything, right? Just 8 billion people like there are. And now I add one squirrel. And then I claim that the world is choking in squirrels. It's drowning in squirrels. 8 billion people, one squirrel, and the world is drowning in squirrels when I add one, right? You would laugh your head off. And that's exactly how much plastic is going in the ocean. One squirrel's worth of plastic for 8 billion pieces of water. That is and we're being told it's choking. We're told that there was a plastic straw up a turtle's nose. That's completely debunked. That's nonsense. They never proved it was plastic. They never proved it was a straw. It's a complete lie. And just to give you some numbers,
it up there. I saw the video and they probably done it just for likes.
Yeah, I mean, in the video, they're saying, what is it? Is it a worm? Is it a worm? And then they pulled it out. And then she says, oh, he bit on it. He said it's plastic. Listen to the video. He bit on it. Oh, really? I've got a PhD in polymer science, and somehow I skipped that method of detecting plastic in my course. You can use NMR, you could use FTIR, you could use Raman spectroscopy, but biting on something to tell what it's made of is not a scientific test. And I wrote to them and said, how do you know it's plastic? And they said, we don't. And I said, how do you know it's a straw? They say, oh, we don't. It could have been anything. I've literally got an email from them admitting they've got no clue what it was.
Wow.
Anyway, so they actually measure what's in the ocean. They go with a net, right, and they grab it. What did they find? 6,048 items in the last sample. 85% of it was fishing nets, which is important because that actually traps animals and kills things, right? So the fishing nets are a real problem. 85% of what they found in the gyre. Guess how much the bags, straws, and bottles that we hear about all the time was by weight?
1%?
0.03%.
Wow.
And we're being told we're drowning in that we have to stop littering. It's coming out of the rivers. And again, I'm not saying we should have that stuff in our rivers, but to say that it's an emergency is an outright lie. And this is a problem because the EU is flying around thousands of people. They've had 6 meetings now to talk about an ocean crisis that doesn't exist. They simply made it up. They've done the same impact as 1 billion PET bottles to fly around to fancy places all around the world and talk about an emergency that they invented. And that's not helping the environment. That's just idiocy. So if you want to do something about the ocean, regulate nets. That's the answer. Don't talk about straws. They did a study. There's a study with a certain type of ship that pulls a net looking for plankton, checking how much plankton's in the ocean. And the special thing about that study is that they've done the same one since the 50s, right? For decades, they've done this same study, pulling a net around the Earth. They had to sail 100,000 miles pulling a small net to find one piece of plastic bag. 100,000 miles. That's 4 times around the planet to find one piece of bag. Not a whole bag, just a piece of bag, right? And we're being told that it's around the turtle's nets. It's complete fiction. There's never been a picture in the history of the world of a turtle with a bag around its net. They're all photoshopped, all trying to scare us, all trying to get our donations to regulate and clean up a thing that isn't there. It's a big scam.
So, because you mentioned the 8 billion people, I think that's another lie. Because when I started researching, I was looking at China, I was looking at India and a few of the other countries. It wasn't adding up because I calculated all the top cities, even the smaller cities and everything, and I was getting nowhere near. And I said, even if I double it, you don't get 1.4 billion. And I'm heavily censored. That was removed, and I was like, every time I've stuff that's removed, it's like, okay, they don't want it. They don't want people to know about this. And after I've done that, I've seen some other people coming out. One person recently was talking about China, and they were actually saying the same thing. They were saying they had the one-child policy for so many years. There's no way they could have that population. So, I mean, obviously I can't go around counting everybody, but, like, like we were saying at the start, like a lot of the stuff we're told information, like there's so much different things, and it's very hard to know what the actual truth is.
Yeah. I'm amazed at how, what's the word to use? Let's use the word delusional, right? So I read 6,000 studies unpaid, right? I'm a professional scientist. I cite every study verbatim. I give a link. I have professors around the world check it. And every day people on social media are arguing with me as if they're flipping Albert Einstein or something. It's like they would literally dig that guy up and start arguing with him about relativity and telling him he's wrong about gravity or gravitational lensing or whatever. I mean, not to say that I can never be wrong, right? But I would never go to a heart surgeon and start arguing with him about the best way to do a triple bypass, right? I mean, my arrogance would have to be out of control to do that. And yet that's what people do with me every day on LinkedIn. They're like, oh yeah, how do you know? And blah, blah, blah. And it's like, really? You've not read a single scientific study on this in your whole life, and you think you're going to tell me what's what based on a headline you saw in The Sun? I mean, it's just preposterous. People need to get a grip of themselves, and try to have the amount of confidence you have in because sometimes people say, oh, you're very sure about your opinions. I'm like, yeah, I've read 6,000 studies to make sure that it's right? The amount of confidence you have in your opinion should be based on how much evidence you have, right? Not based on some headline you saw from an NGO that wants to, scare you into donating.
Well, it's fascinating. And like, if we look at the household, like, what way should people actually be behaving? Because it's all a lie. And I mean, even if we kind of twist this a bit, like what you're doing, you're sharing truth compared to what 99% of the people. Are you actually censored? Are they stopping your stuff? Like, if you have some stuff on social media, is it shadow banned? Is it not shown? Do they remove anything? Because what I'm seeing is the stuff that's promoting a certain agenda gets all the views and all the likes, and anything that's kind of the truth, it's like either removed, you get fact check. I mean, I've had stuff that said fact checkers that it's 100% true, and they say it's false. And I'm just curious, do you experience any of that?
I did in the beginning, but what I do when I post things, I cite them verbatim and I give links to it and so forth. So I'm very careful to always back up every single statement with evidence that can be checked. And in the beginning, I had a problem with that because the fact checkers, they're just normal people, right? They've been brainwashed with the same stuff as everyone else. So in the beginning, it was a problem. But after a while, people just realized it was true. And they realized I'm a professional scientist sharing science for free. And I'm not trying to sell any product. My books are for free. People are always like, he's trying to sell a book. The books are for free in different languages. Go and download them. You don't even need to give me your name or your email address. You can go to the Plastics Research Council and see the other professors who are endorsing this work and everything. So there is some of that going on because these people don't know the science. So they're not, I'm a fact checker myself, right? And I know what I'm doing because I've actually read the studies. Whereas these people, they're just doing their best. So I do see that going on. It has happened to me in the past, but it doesn't happen anymore.
And your business, then you're helping people as well, companies, with their recycling, let's say. Yeah, is that where you're going in and you're kind of making sure they're doing things right?
No, I don't do any of that. So I don't make, sell, or market plastic, and I'm not really helping anybody with recycling or anything like that. I'm just trying to share science. Yeah, so that's what I do. So that's a confusing thing, right? Because my job is to be a problem solver and make better materials. That's my paid job, but that's not what I'm here for. I'm talking to you unpaid now for the Plastics Research Council, sharing science for free. So I have to get paid somehow, right? My job is a totally separate thing, being a scientist. And there's examples of exactly problems I've solved on my website and stuff like that. So it's important to have that so it's totally unrelated basically to what I'm doing here. I devote a certain 1,000 hours a year to unpaid work to share the science.
Excellent. And the two books that you've got, because one I believe is around 90. You might just kind of tell, because I can make sure I put the links in the show notes in here. Okay.
The Plastics Paradox is the first one. It's like a coffee table book and it's really easy to read. And that one was based on 400 studies and everything in it is still right. Nobody's found a scientific error in it. So that's the one I'd recommend, even though it's 5 years old, everything's still correct. Includes microplastics, ocean waste, recycling, everything's in there. But this is the heavier, newer book based on 6,000 studies. And I cite 250 of them in this book. That's harder to read because it's packed full of science, but it's a more solid document in terms of, backing up what I'm saying with peer-reviewed science. And that's the one that's been endorsed by professors all around the world. I mean, literally people I've never met. I send it to professors I'd never met. Think about that. Think about if I was a charlatan, right, making stuff up, and I'm sending my book to professors in Australia and New Zealand and Netherlands and Germany and England and Ireland and Canada, America, all around the world, and saying, here, check this out. I mean, why would I do that? I'd have to be an idiot. They would just say, you're a buffoon, and talking nonsense. But instead, they asked if they could help share the science, if they could use these books to teach their students and help me translate it into other languages and so forth. So I was surprised at that reaction, to be honest.
And because we touched on, the pay review stuff, and it's actually harmful for genuine scientists like yourself and others that are actually doing it. So do you have to go to court? What's the solution to stopping all this?
The ultimate solution would be this. So I asked ChatGPT, why are billionaires funding attacks on plastics? Right? Because it's a mystery to me. I mean, these people should be smart. And I couldn't work out, why is Michael Bloomberg, for example, on record as funding beyond petrochemicals and beyond plastics? And it's not a secret, right? He's out there saying, I'm against plastic and I'm giving these people money to attack plastic. So I'm not exposing some secret. And the answer is this. ChatGPT said, well, it's this simple. The billionaires think plastic is part of the petrochemical industry. That's fossil fuel. That means global warming. Therefore, plastics are bad, right? And it's basically 5-year-old thinking, to be honest. Because what you need to ask yourself is not if something has an impact. Everything has an impact. But do plastics have more or less impact than the alternatives? Because if you're against plastic, that means now people have to buy paper, metal, or glass, right? Because they've got to put their groceries in something. They've got to build their houses out of something. And when you study that, you find out that replacing plastic increases impact in 90% of cases. And not by a little bit. Sorry. Replacing plastic means 4 times more waste, 3 times more greenhouse gas, and using twice as much fossil fuel. So that's what these billionaires, in their wisdom, never thought to check. Right? Plastic does use fossil fuel, but replacing it means twice as much fossil fuel. They're spending tens of millions of dollars to campaign against their own wishes. I wish I was that rich, that I could spend tens of millions to campaign against what I believe in. And as soon as, so this is how you would stop it. I would have to get to Davos, where all these people are brainwashed by people with interests, and show them the science and say, hey, if you're really against fossil fuel, you need to stop demonizing plastic because you're actually making this worse. Plastic, because it makes cars lighter, because it insulates our homes, and because it prevents food waste, 4% of oil is used to make plastic, but you save more than 4% by making cars lighter, by preventing food waste, and by insulating homes. So they're only looking at one side of the equation, how much oil is used to make plastic, and they forgot, in their infinite wisdom, to count all the other side of the equation, which is how much fossil fuel do you save by using the plastic. So if these people were to ever see the facts, they would change their mind, just like all the policymakers that I've met around the world have changed their minds once they saw the evidence. Unfortunately, I'm not friends with Elon Musk or Bill Gates or Joe Rogan or any of these people that can really make a difference. I'm sitting here on my couch shouting the truth unpaid. So whereas these people have got massive amounts of funding to share nonsense.
Yeah, it's fascinating that you haven't been brought in, because that's what they kind of talk about all the time at these Davos things. And with your experience, you're the one that should be telling them all what to do, and they should heed what you're saying and then resolve everything.
Yeah, they fly on their private jet to talk about how we can save impact, and the worst thing you can do is flying. It's incredible. Yeah, these people need to spend less time trying to look good and feel good and more time actually being good.
No, absolutely. Listen, Chris, thoroughly enjoy. I don't know, is there anything else that we haven't covered that you'd like to mention?
I don't think so. I mean, just be skeptical, people. Don't believe. The more salacious a headline is, the less likely it is to be true. I mean, if you hear something that's really exciting, it's probably not the case. If you hear something that's really boring, like we're not dying of this or that, it's probably true. And there is one thing I'd like to say. People say, well, if microplastics are not dangerous, why is there so much hubbub about it? Why are people against it? And scientists studied that too. They looked at hundreds and hundreds of studies on microplastics. 93% of media articles say that it's a definite danger, whereas the vast majority of scientific articles say there's no problem. So the reason people are worried is that it's scientifically proven that we've been lied to about microplastics. We've been told it's dangerous when that's the exact opposite of what most of the scientific studies are saying. And that's so that study is by Volker et al. It's about framing risks. And he proved that we've been misled about microplastics. So that's one of the main reasons people are freaking out, because, if it bleeds, leads. That's how the media make money, by spreading stuff that's exciting but not necessarily true.
No, excellent. Well, I've learned something today. I know my listeners have, so you might let the listeners know where they can find you, Chris.
Yeah, go to the plasticsresearchcouncil.com and you can see everything I said, cited verbatim, links to hundreds of studies, and the people who are supporting my work, working unpaid again, to just because some people think facts are important.
No, excellent. I'll make sure I put the links, both the audio and the video. Thank you very much.
Yeah, cheers. Really appreciate it. Thanks for being a great interviewer.
No problem. So that's all for the Awakening podcast and also the Speaking podcast, because I think this is very relevant. So I'm putting it out on both shows. So that's why.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So you find everything about me, scan the QR code, go to roycollin.com. And if you're looking for virtual assistance, go to va.world. This is an important one. So try to share it with maybe 3 people. It helps. Until next week, take care.